We have done the walkthrough of Kiali dashboard. Now there's something that I want to show you before I conclude Istio, that is troubleshooting using Istio proxy pod or Istio proxy container. What if something does not work, or what if something is not running as the way you are expecting? How do you do the troubleshooting? And in Istio there's only one way and there's only one place which you can use to do this traffic troubleshooting, that is Istio proxy container. Of course, you can use Kiali dashboard to do all sort of other troubleshooting, like whether all the configurations are fine, whether the pods are healthy or not, whether your application is up and running or not. But let's say you have created a virtual service and various destination rules, or you have created a gateway, Istio ingress gateway, and you are sending traffic, but it is not reaching the destination rules or the pods which it is supposed to. How do you find out what is wrong and where is wrong? So that is where Istio proxy comes into picture. Now, whatever we have seen in Istio, all the pods in Istio system namespace and the namespace which is in Istio service mesh has Istio proxy. So this troubleshooting would be true for any components. Like as I said, it can be an Istio ingress gateway, or it can be a pod which you are running, or a virtual service which you are trying to test. The only difference is that you have to log in to, or you have to take a look at the log of the Istio proxy of that particular pod. Let's say you are troubleshooting Istio ingress gateway, then you'll have to take a look at the Istio proxy pod of Istio ingress gateway. Or you are troubleshooting one of your application components, you have to take a look at the Istio proxy of the pod from where the traffic is not working properly. Let me tell you the setup that I have done. I have deployed three apps, app 1, app 2, and app 3, and it has its own services, app 1, app 2, and app 3, and it is in 1126 deployments. It has the services also. And I have created the virtual service corresponding to these apps. The first virtual service is for app 1. Now notice here I am sending it to two destinations, but the second destination, which is app 7, does not exist. And the distribution is 50-50, but app 7 does not exist and is trying to send to app 2. I have created the destination rules for app 1, which is there, and app 2, which is not there because the host app 7 does not exist. So I'll deploy this one and we'll see, and we'll try to send traffic using app 1 service, and we'll troubleshoot what is the problem. Let's say you have done this mistake and you have applied the changes, but you're not getting the expected result. How do you find that out? So these are the three pods that are running, and we have services also. These are the three services, app 1, app 2, and app 3. Now what I have done in the virtual service for app 1 is that 50% of the traffic is going to app 1 and 50% of the traffic is going to app 7, which does not exist. Now let me log into app 2 pod and let me show you that it is actually not working. Alright, so I'm inside of the pod, and if I send, it is not going anywhere. Next time I think it will go. So it went to app 1 first time, second time it's not going anywhere, third time also is not going, fourth time, okay, fifth time it went. So it's working, meaning that some traffic is going to app 1, but when it is trying to reach to app 7, it is not going because app 7 is not there. Now how do you troubleshoot? So first thing is that I have opened three terminals. This is the pod. I'm inside of the pod app 2, and here let me show you the pods and the services, and these are the pods and services. And here what I'll do is I'll log into, or I'll take a look at the log of Istio proxy container. Now the question is, which container should I look into? Should it be app 2 pod or app 1 pod or app 7 pod? Anyway, app 7 is not there. Now here's the thing. I'll run this curl command from app 2 pod. So the traffic from app 2 pod, or the traffic from the container in app 2 pod, will go to Istio proxy and then it will distribute. So it means that I'll have to log in, or I'll have to trace the log of Istio proxy in app 2 pod. So I'm checking the log of Istio proxy container, and I'm using dash f, which is similar to tail f. Press enter and let's clear this out. So now I'm following. All right, so let's enter first time. So it did not go. Let's see if we have any output in Istio proxy. So I've got an output. Let's do it again. It went, and I have one more output. So notice that the second output is bigger than the first output, and you can get some information, or you can get an idea what is happening, why it is not going, why it did not go the first time. So let me try to elaborate that here. So we ran this command, curl command. So first time or the second time it went, and notice the highlighted portion. The first one is the HTTP verb that we are using, which is get, curl users get, and the return code is 200, which is correct because it is returning. HTTP 200 means it's working. Then we have some information. We don't bother about it. This is the version of curl. This is the request ID, by the way, and this one in orange is the request. So we are sending the request to app1 service on port number 8080. Now what happened, this got translated to a request to pod IP 104408 on port 80. Let's go ahead and see what this pod is. Now see this 104408, this is the pod IP of app1, and of course this pod is running on port 80, or the application, HTTP application that I have created is running on port 80 because the container port number is 80. So seems like it got request to this one got translated to this pod IP and this container port. Then we have the response in green color. So in response, from where the response is coming. The response is an outbound response. The destination rule is app1 subset, and then the service that we had used is app1 prod service cluster local. Now this last portion here is where we are getting the response in app2 pod. Now this 104407 is the IP address of app2 pod. As you can see here, 104407 is IP address of app2 pod. So we're getting the response back in this pod, and this is the service IP and service port of app1, 10.146.207. So 10.146.207 is the service IP of app1, and it is of course running on port number 8080. And that's what it is showing. It is running on port number 8080, and we are getting the response, and it is using this virtual service app1 service routes, which is nothing but the name of the route in the virtual service app1. So this is fine, and this is what this second response is. But take a look at the first response. It did not provide any output. It also went to app1 service routes, but it is smaller. So let's try to decipher this. And this is the output of the second one. Now do a little bit of comparison, you'll understand what is happening. First of all, the return code is 503 and NR, which means no result. So of course it did not work. It was not successful. Had it been successful, you would have gotten 200. Request ID is different, and then this is the request which is being sent to app1.prod.svc.cluster.local on port number 8080, which is matching with the first one wherein we got the response. But in the previous one, when it was successful, it got translated to the pod IP of app1. Now this time it did not get translated. Also, we got an outbound response. See this yellow highlighted, but here the yellow is dash. That means there was no outbound response from anywhere. And here we received the outbound response on this IP address and on this port, which is obvious because this is the app2 IP address of app2 pod, and this is where we received the response. Now here this is blank. That means it did not even receive the response. This is the service IP address of app1 because we are supposed to hit app1 come what may, and from there it will go to app1 and app7. So it is hitting that same service route, but it is not getting any response. So now you know where the problem is. By looking at the pod IP address, you know that the request is being translated to a pod IP. So in the first case, it got translated to 1044.08, but in the second time it did not. So now, but in the second time also, or in the first time also in this case, it is using the same service route. Now what you do, you go to the virtual service and now take a look at the routes. Both the times it is hitting the same routing rule. First time app 1 is successful, but app 7 is not. So now you know why app 7 is not successful, because you go back here and you see that there is no app 7. So you can keep on doing it. So it did not get any response, and same thing, I'm getting 503. Let's see again. So I got a response. I should get 200 this time. So as you can see, we got 200 and everything is fine. So this is how you troubleshoot your routing rules using Istio proxy. Now I have only shown you routing routes, but if you have any problem in Istio proxy, let's say your service entry is not working, your Istio ingress gateway is not working, Istio egress gateway is not working, every time you can go ahead and take a look at the Istio proxy container of that particular pod where you're sending the request from, and then find out what is the problem. So this time I logged into app2 pod, which is this one. So that's why I'm looking at the Istio proxy container of app2 pod, which is this one. So this is how you troubleshoot using Istio proxy, and this is very helpful because you can demystify all the problem that you're facing as far as routing rules are concerned, or as far as traffic management is concerned, using Istio proxy container. So that's all about troubleshooting. I do not want to show any more use case, but of course you can test other use cases on your own. I would suggest you practice this troubleshooting a little bit more, because it can be really handy when you try to deploy your service routing rules using virtual service in Istio, or routing rules or traffic management using Istio.